Recognizes the distinguished gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welch, for 5 minutes.
I thank the witnesses and I thank the chair and my colleagues. In Vermont, we have a constitutional amendment that we'll be voting on that would enshrine the right of a woman to make her decision about reproductive choice. We have passed a law signed by a Republican governor that would protect a woman's right to make that decision. Now, I want to say two things. Number one, I'm unaware of our U.S. Supreme Court ever passing a law or making a decision that took away a right that had existed, in this case, reproductive freedom under Roe for 50 years. I am aware of the court making decisions, as they did in Brown v. Board of Education, to expand rights that are in the spirit of the Constitution, inequality under the law, which has been the aspirational goal of our Constitution and our Declaration. But it's always been about reaching beyond where we were, as opposed to taking back what had been acknowledged. Second, when I returned to Burlington, Vermont on the day of the court decision, there were demonstrations across Vermont. And there have been other times when I've appeared at demonstrations when an action taken by a branch of government was very upsetting to people in Vermont. And oftentimes I've experienced people's anger at the actions that were taken. This one was different. It was fear. It was fear. And it was fear about what this meant for a woman's right to make her decision about her own reproductive choices. It was also fear about the erosion of privacy and what the implications were for contraception, same-sex marriage, in a whole range of cases that have essentially respected the individual's right in the sanctity of his or her privacy protection. And that awaits us. The second point is that we know that abortion is a very, very important topic for everyone. With our witnesses, there's some disagreement here, and it's a passionately held position. But what we had since Roe was an opportunity for people to make their own decisions and not impose their decision on someone whose decision was different. And what I've seen since the Dobbs decision is, in our divided society, an escalation in the division that is really very dangerous for our country, because you're seeing legislatures now pass laws that take away a right. It's animated by people who not only have made a decision that they never want to have an abortion, but who then want, through politics, to impose that decision that's theirs onto others. And I think we should all be concerned about that division. And I am hearing from medical practitioners an immense amount of apprehension that they'll be second-guessed. Ms. Hawley, I'll ask you, Mr. Khanna had asked you about whether a woman should ever be prosecuted, and of course you answered no, and I really appreciate that. Do you think a doctor who performed an abortion based on her medical judgment that was necessary to protect the health of the woman should ever be prosecuted?
Absolutely not. So I think there's two issues here. Women should never be prosecuted for having an abortion. Women are so often harmed by abortion. They suffer emotional, physical consequences. And every state allows for emergency exception to save the life of the mother. Mississippi allows that in the physician's best judgment.
Thank you. And Ms. Graves, or Professor Graves, you had mentioned I think you had mentioned that the court had never taken away a right. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that in my remaining time?
This is the first time in our history where we have had a court take away an individual right, and I think that's exactly why we are seeing this level of legal chaos. We have shaped our other laws and systems around the idea that abortion was legal in this country. And so what that means is sort of the individual and personal freedom that people had to make those decisions, to plan and determine whether they have a child are no longer guaranteed to be theirs. And the fundamental floors are not state-by-state ideas. We're one nation with one constitution with a fundamental floor.
The gentleman's time is
Thank you very much.
expired.
I yield back.
The gentleman